In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. They promise it'll get better, but it usually gets worse. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data, so we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, and other industry scandals are designed to keep the money flowing. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing, so they do a virus scan and then wipe out our precious photos. Intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my home office, overlooking the can of worms in downtown Rochester, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. My name is Mark Anthony Arena. I am so glad you are here with me today. We have another special guest episode. I think you'll be fascinated by him, as all my special guests I think are fascinating. Taylor, tell us about yourself. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's just Abrahamse.
Okay, cool. Taylor Abrahamse. Welcome. And
it's got an E on the end of it. It's a superfluous nipple, you know. Nothing I can do about it.
It's what's a vestigial?
Yeah. Yes.
How's that? Cool. So you're a musician, and I met him through a Zoom gathering thing, and I was just impressed with this. This guy is so talented. So tell us why you got into music. And
Oh, well, why I got into music, that's a way bigger question. So before this started, we were saying all kinds of wacky things that were quite fascinating. More fascinating than why I got into music, but I think it kind of leads into why I got into music, which is just as a kid, I've just always been fixated on doing things that are distinct and unique, and experimenting and exploring and trying out ideas. And songwriting is just a great way to put different things together and see if they work. You know, it's a good way to be a creative scientist. So it was, you know, it was a nice shorthand way for me to try out a lot of ideas and thoughts, I guess. You know, being a kid, you know, when you're playing pretend on the playground or something like that, or even, you know, for me when I was on my own, just, you know, playing with toys, it was always just, how can I, you know, make something cool happen in this moment? You know, how can I fill this with something interesting, I guess? And
man, that's good. I love being unique.
Right?
I really, what's the word? I relish in uniqueness, right? And I love all that. So I totally hear you.
Yeah, and it's and I try not to mean that in a pretentious way, like
sure.
Oh, I just want to be, I was always special, and I can't kind of give you a clear answer on why
I was cool before it was
why
cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or why just strange things interest me. You know, because there's plenty of people whose psychology I can't wrap my mind around, where they're much more interested in things being very, very safe and familiar all the time, and routine to a fault. You know,
sure.
So,
I like some consistency, but yeah.
When it's more like you need to control everything. I say that, but I'm also such a bloody control freak. So I'm just projecting. Nothing I'm saying is making any sense anymore. Everything's falling apart.
No, it means you have a high IQ. I'm totally there with you.
Yeah,
It's
it is. It's the island metaphor. The more you know, the more of the water you see around the island, and the less you think you really understand. And so,
yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
But I don't know. I just, I don't know. You asked me why, and whys are big questions, so I can't answer that too well. And if this was, the Colbert Show, then, we'd already be at the commercial break. I would have butchered it. So, yeah, I need some interview practice. Anyway,
I was on a show last Saturday, and it it went. I couldn't even finish my sentence. It was such a fast. I was happy to be there. It was time flies when you're having fun, but it was such a
yeah.
short show. By the time I could get my idea out, it was already time for a commercial break.
Yeah, no, it drives me nuts. It's funny how, yeah, my mind is just like it's a bunch of free association that I just kind of
Mm-hmm.
can't stop. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's a byproduct of ADD or something like that. You're constantly just going where the stimulation is. Um,
Yeah.
but for me, it was, there was a lot of isolation as a kid, kind of growing up in the country and having plenty of my life where, the internet wasn't really quite a thing yet. I vividly remember Windows 95 coming into our house in like in 96 or something like that. And the
Mm-hmm.
dial-up modem and, like waiting 3 minutes for this little photo of Optimus Prime from Beast Wars to load on the screen. You're like, wow, that's a photo and it's just there,
And it took that long.
like
But
it.
no, I'm with you because I had I was not one of those kids who was in 50 sports and 50 activities, and I had tons of time to think by myself. And that's
Hmm.
definitely something. You're confirming this now. That's
Yeah, and
definitely
so
why I'm
it's
a thinker.
yeah, and it's really important to find ways to entertain yourself because you
Mm-hmm.
start to understand what you like and you're able to put together all the information that you unload on yourself in new and exciting ways that can benefit humanity ideally.
Oh yeah, I'm
So
always thinking in the car,
yeah,
even today as an adult, right? I'm in the car and I'm thinking, all right, how can we improve this? How can we Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah. Whereas there's certainly been a temptation for me that I've had to really fight against to just kind of inundate myself with data because since the pandemic it's extra easy, and since smartphones it's extra easy to do that, rather than still cut yourself off and collect everything that you're experiencing and turn it into something better.
I used to spend
um,
hours every night ADDing on Wikipedia, and that's awesome.
yes,
But I
yes,
eventually had to, okay, Mark, you know what? Honestly, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So I had to tell myself, all right, you know what? That book's probably cool, but I probably already know that concept. Or, you have to tell
yes,
yourself, I'm not going to go down those aisles, and then you can focus on, hey, you know what? This is something I want to pursue.
yeah, and it's a I don't I can't find an explanation exactly that you can put into words or put a formula on for when it's like, okay, it's time to leave the books alone, and when it's like, oh, they're all the same and it's a cynical response to it, or when it's like, okay, I've got what I need and I'm just letting fear dictate my choices now and it's time to create something instead, to
Yeah.
counteract that fear.
Yeah, and
um
it's I'm not being cynical. I just tell myself, hey, you know what? That book's probably really cool, but I'm gonna focus on the
yeah,
stuff, on my path. I finally, after being really lost as a young adult, not knowing what to do with my life, now I am
yeah.
really on my path.
Good, that's great. I envy you in some ways, but I think I am also getting clearer to just the path. And maybe it's just the brain chemistry just changes enough that we just get clarity, even if we're completely confused, just the brain figures it out for us. And we act like it's our own journey when it's just biological processes doing their thing.
Or we
I
just
don't know.
pick something and run with it.
Yeah, well, the thing is, for me, like, I picked at a very young age art and entertainment and all this stuff, and I haven't really been able to see outside of that. And like, I saw a Paul McCartney interview recently where he's talking about, like, when the Beatles ended, it was like, he has all this spare time and he's out in, with Linda on the hippie farm, and it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And it's like, well, it was hard for him, because you're finally confronted with like the infinity of things, but it's like, music's a tough thing to break away from, once you really get into it. And there was something about the look on his face while he said that I related to. And I think this is what I'm trying to get to, is like, there's also just this higher self and this intuitive self and this ability to perceive things that I can't quite put into words, but I can see it sometimes in people's faces when I talk to them or listen to them. And so it was like, it was comforting, not so much what Paul was saying, but just the energy that he was giving off in that moment of like, God, how like he had, he wasn't in quite a dark place, and at the same age as him when the Beatles broke up, I was in a really dark place because I had just lost my studio, and like it was like my whole Beatles era in a way fell apart, but I also didn't have, any hits to show for it or anything like that. But still, it was very stark to suddenly just be out in the country again and rebuilding things and rethinking about things, and what do you choose? And I just like how he chose music again, I've ultimately done the same thing, at least for now, and it does come from an acceptance of like whatever you derive joy from or find fascinating, it's how do I even say this? It's just it's so tempting to just give it all up and start over in some other direction, but that's also terrifying, and it's also in some ways almost extra selfish,
Yeah.
in a way that I don't quite feel right about. I certainly think that I need and I deserve to entertain more of my curiosities, and I've been letting those more into my life and having a bit more of a work-life balance. Like, certainly I was a absolute workahol, to a detriment for most of my life since I was like 6 years old, because I asked my parents for an acting agent, and I was going on film sets by the time I was 6, 7,
Really?
and all this stuff. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And so there's a lot of cool, but also like it just it really trained me to be a workahol, and scarf down that workahol. And there's histories of addiction in my family tree, and mine was workahol.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe me, I've been there. I get it. I mean, it's not a bad one to have as far as addictions, but I totally get it, because I spent the past 10, 15 years now just burning myself out. I used to have really thick hair.
Yeah.
And
wow. There's cures for that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, it was a really having things fall apart was also necessary for me. It's that cliche of like to figure out how to be comfortable with just myself a lot more,
right.
And it's deepened the meaning of the art and music that I'm gradually making. And
you're not just churning it out.
Yeah, and it's like, I can churn it out, but it's. I think Todd Rundgren said something like after he'd had a few hits, he was like kind of bored of it. It's like, I've been there, done that. I know what that is. Why would I want to go back there? And so and my heroes have tended to be the ones. I think that was maybe more of an excuse on Todd's part. It's like, because I think there is something kind of always interesting in like, well, can you have it all? Can you have the thing that pushes music forward and also has some iconic hit that's always going to be in your Spotify top 5 or something like that, like
a little bit of both.
Like, can you play for both, so it might have been a cop out on Todd's part, but I'm also not going to assert that by any means.
Uh-huh.
But
Mhm.
yeah, I guess I'm trying to say that for me, a lot of my heroes have been people who are always they put their curiosity above everything else.
Right, where they're not just in it to make money, or just like all right, Metallica.
It's that childlike curiosity that comes first. For Paul Simon, it's always been that. That's why he will, like in the if you want to listen to a really fun thing, there's a audiobook that's basically just interviews with him that Malcolm Gladwell conducted, and just every time he's always trying to push things forward. And even he made a musical that flopped horribly and he was in a very dark place from it, and then he went on an ayahuasca trip, and then it's like you can almost hear the ayahuasca headiness over his next few albums. And then by the time he gets to his last serious album, besides kind of this song cycle thing he put out this last year, it gets so bizarre, and he's using microtonal instruments, and it's like, it just gets further and further away from, but I want Paul to just go and whistle and, sing me and Julio down by the schoolyard, but but he's always just like, no, screw you, I'm going to do my own thing. And people come along for the ride or they don't. And even when I saw him live, his last tour, he's doing all these weird ass songs in 9/11 time that I want to hear, that half the audience doesn't want to hear. But it's like, as long as he does Sounds of Silence at the end, he's like, he's redeemed in everyone's eyes.
I've got two great examples as you say that, and my head's light bulbs lighting up in my head like to everything you say. But there's two examples that I find cool. Metallica did an album called Saint Anger, and Phil Collins did an album called, it was like A Hot Night at Phil's, where he just, so Metallica's album was just them in a garage just banging on some garbage cans, or that's how it sounds, and Phil's album was all about him doing jazz. Like, what do you mean Phil Collins doing jazz? What? He's not jazz, he's 80s pop. Both of those albums, I thought they sucked, but I applauded them because it was, look, these people are doing something different. They want to be who they are. They don't want to be stuck in that, what do they call it? Like the Seinfeld characters were typecast, right? Yeah. They didn't want to become typecast. They wanted to do something different. So I applauded them, and I own both those albums, right?
Yeah. No, a lot of my favorite artists have done really bizarre projects. Speaking of Todd Rundgren again, I forget the name of it, but in the early 90s, he put out an album. I think it got like 1 star from Rolling Stone. But it's, an album that's basically just a bunch of snippets that I guess play together in a random order and create a new composition every time. Because you just put the random button on your CD player.
Oh, but that's inventive.
Yeah, exactly. Or, the Flaming Lips, they had that Zurika thing where they had 4 different CDs that you tried to play at the same time through 4 different sound systems. And and if you timed it, it's a different experience every time just because of the phasing differences between all the...
Because you're never going to line them up exactly, right?
Yeah, stuff like that.
And you know what? For every hit, there's a bunch of misses that we forget about, right? So in other words, you got to keep trying and trying, and a lot of them will be duds, but some of them will be hits, right? Like, we all know Seinfeld, and we all know a bunch of these shows, but how many zillions of shows flopped beforehand? You got to try new things.
Yeah, well, and also... who cares if it is a flop? Because there could be a myriad of reasons it is a flop that has nothing to do with the merit of the actual work. And artistic merit is such a subjective thing. I left a comment on a YouTube video last night. I don't know. I think I had too much coffee yesterday or something like that. And so I stayed up stupid late tonight, which is part of why I've been a little late for this. I had to join the human race again. So thanks for your patience. And catch up on some things. But there was a YouTuber who she tried this little gimmick out. And I won't explain the whole thing because otherwise I feel like I won't get to the meat of what I'm trying to say. But I left a comment that was basically saying, don't worry about part of what I said in it. It started to become just a really heady tirade. Was that every artistic contribution, they're just things to varying degrees of authenticity or inauthenticity, and they all bring us slowly closer to some kind of like creative singularity, I guess, of just blinding, brilliant, transcendental art that brings humanity to whatever the next stage is. So it's not so much a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and the when just gets a little expedited the more courageous people are.
Well, it brings clarity. I love it.
Yeah, but it's having the compassion to be like, okay, it is going to be an up and down thing. You're not always going to put out something that's perfect. You might even think it's perfect at the time, and then you look back on it with a clearer mind, or after you stop drinking or whatever it is, and then are like, oh God,
what was that?
That's on my permanent record now. Great, or whatever it is.
What did I do?
But then if we want to get really Alan Wattsy about it, there's no separation between people, right? We're all just different collections of energy who have certain things that only we can create, and it's up to us to just create those things, and then they all kind of cascade in some elaborate butterfly effect where sometimes something someone made that 10 people heard, one of those 10 people are going to be someone who are so inspired by it that they create something that impacts millions of people, and also they could impact millions of people meaningfully in like a super positive way or a super negative way, or just like a little spritz, like apathy. There's certain songs we all know, but we don't really have any attachment to it. It's just someone had enough money to push it out there enough.
Right. Oh, every retail store I walk in, and you have to hear the same 20 songs over and over again, and Jack and Diane being the worst song in the world in my opinion.
Thank you for saying that. I am so on the same page with you. That and like Summer of '69. I don't like Summer of '69 either.
Yeah, but why do people love it? Like, there's people in my city, they just thrive on the most boring thing. Like, they all drive silver Camrys, and they worship the Buffalo Bills, and they love Jack and Diane and Summer of '69.
Well, human beings like security because it silences the chaos of the mind.
They've also never been exposed to better stuff. And I'll tell you something in response to a lot of the stuff you're saying about merit versus popularity. My buddy Jimmy also thrives on being distinct and unique, as you said, and he's friends with a band, and I'm going to introduce you to them. And
I do want to just say one thing though. It's like some people are just what they are, and they're serving that purpose, right? It's like if uniqueness by its very nature, not everyone can be it, right?
Whoa.
But every person can be on the road to themselves and get better and better at letting what they are out.
Right, because I was one of those unenlightened people at one point too. Yeah, and but that brings up a huge point. If we all listened, and he says this too, Jimmy says this about this band, is that if they were popular, then they wouldn't be unique anymore, and then we wouldn't, But these guys, you would love them. They're all UC Santa Cruz music graduates, and they're trained in the most craziest, most obscure didgeridoo, bouzouki, like these exotic world instruments, right? And they're incredible. And he and I always kind of hang our heads because it's like, Taylor Swift has billions of fans, and these guys who are incredibly talented and have the most intricate music, they have like 10 fans, right? But you're right that they wouldn't be unique if they weren't unique.
Well, and also one of those 10 fans could be, someone who because of some note that didgeridoo plays one time is relaxed enough that they have some crazy epiphany and they invent something wonderful. So it's I'm just trying to say that we're all just energy moving around, and any success is and any failure in the entirety of our lifetimes are really something that we can take some responsibility for, and that's either something that's going to give you an aneurysm, like what I like contributed to genocide indirectly, or it's something that's going to empower you. But I think that that's kind of a POV I'm taking on lately, of like, yeah, we're all there. There's no real separation between all of us, and so that helps the ego dissolve. That helps this notion of like, well, I'm not successful, start to dissipate. And capitalism is going to want to encourage the individualistic way of looking at things, and is going to want everyone to fight to be really rich, because that's how you make people spend more money, if it's about individual success. But it no matter what, it's a collective success, and there's no separation between us. So, and you've already made it by the mere act of existing and doing stuff. You've already made it.
Oh, wow. And to your point about, like you said, maybe the one of the 10 fans might have an epiphany because of this, right? I'm writing 2 books actually coming up, and I want to tell you about both, but one of the conclusions in the first book, I say, look, I actually invented something and it was going to be huge, and then it fell apart. And of course, spending a lot of years reflecting on it, lamenting and all that, and one of the things I realized was, that phrase they say, be the world to one person, right? Where if you're famous and all that, but you have no family, no one's going to care about you. Zillions of people might care a tiny bit about you, right? But if you can be the world to a few people, that's actually better. Mm-hmm. So I like what you're saying is you could have zillions of fans, or you could have a few people who truly, truly care about you and truly appreciate you and what you're doing and whatever. So that's really cool. We're going to cut this into 2 episodes. We haven't gotten into anything yet. So this was just our introducing you. No, and that's cool. Like we got time, so we're gonna do 2 episodes here. This will conclude the first episode.
So I guess we can't really. We just talked about concepts and stuff, but I mean, it's like the Jim Carrey thing. Like, I am not Taylor Abrahamse. Whoa, mind blowing. So whatever. I guess that's a picture of me. The real picture of me, I guess, is, I don't know. I it's hard to even have. I don't know how to cultivate a brand that represents me, or for anyone to know who the hell I am.
Uniqueness, and absolute uniqueness and care and wonder and connection. Like, that's you gave us that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So your song
That's
is Fall, and I'm going to use that as my intro and outro for these episodes because it's so cool. And so thanks. I wanted to do that for you. And one thing I want to tell you too is one thing I really admired about you when I looked at all your YouTube videos. I listened to almost all your music videos on YouTube, and the one that really touched me was the one where you used home video footage of you and your mom. I thought that was just the most touching thing.
Oh, thanks. The was that the Heaven in Your Eyes one, with the 60s footage, or the Out Like a Light one, where
actually both,
with her and the Parkinsons?
Yeah,
okay.
I saw both. Yeah, one of them was the 60s and one was later. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah,
so cool.
And I end up having to edit all those videos, so thank you. I'm glad they hit for you.
Absolutely, yeah. You put that personal touch in when you edited, I'm sure, because you knew what was gonna work and what. So that's cool. One last thing I noticed in your email signature, I think it was, where you said, "Save the oddballs and they'll save the world."
Yeah. So I think that's kind of a culmination of, in a way, what we're kind of saying right now. But I might need to update that or something like that. But it just rings well,
Yeah.
I think that there's such a push towards conformity in every sense, and the internet, I think, makes it an easier place to embrace your insanity, or at least let it out. But I think there's obviously this really creepy reckoning that's being had between corporate life and then the rest of the internet, because it's almost like there's this giant inside joke that the entire human race is saying to each other, where you watch a YouTube video where it's just like capitalism, or how broken the system is, or how insane this person is on TikTok, making these videos where they're sexually eating fruit, but it's like, they're making a killing at it, so that's why they're doing it. And so that they can get us to talk about it, and then my job is just to react to it and talk about it, and this feedback loop, and then
it's a vicious cycle of just waste.
Yeah, or like people talking about the one person who did something unique.
Talking about. Right. It's just turn it all off and go do something good. I don't participate in social media,
It's like I took leadership courses sometimes where they talk about living life, in the bleachers, like in the stands, or like really playing the game of it. Yeah. And there's like the few people out there willing to actually just be on the field. And now it's like you've got bleachers, and then you've got bleachers looking at the bleachers, and it's like they've made a paywall, a metaphorical paywall, where it's like, the React YouTubers are the ones at the closer to the field, and then they relay it to the people in the B tier who relate to the people in the C tier, and they're all trying to monetize it every step of the way.
Right. and people are consuming it because people no longer have critical thinking skills and no longer question whether or not they should be wasting their time doing something, in my opinion.
Well, if it's like, I can make money at it, then it kind of short circuits common sense, and people start doing weirder and weirder things.
And that's a huge point, because when I was young, people, I know a ton of people who are like, I just do it to make money. Like, I never do what I do to make money. I do what I do because it helps people, and the money comes later, right? Because there's plenty of stuff I could be doing, like when you said earlier, giving up music and doing something else. I could easily give up my job and go do something else, but it's not who I am. It wouldn't be pursuing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I commend you for that, for going for that authenticity, for sure. I just to finish my thought, I think also what I was trying to say though is like, it's like you watch these chaotic videos, and then it's like, every couple minutes there's like a 5-second ad for like a freaking phone game, or for a bank that comes up, and then the bank still has this like bizarre airbrushed image of like what it is to be a millennial that they've like really carefully researched. And so and it's like, the black girl with the white guy, and they're getting their first apartment, and they're smiling, and they're putting down the boxes, and they're setting things up for the first time, and he gets out his phone, and he like orders the pizza so they can have the pizza on the floor, and it's like DoorDash, and it's just
you just painted such a perfect picture.
I could have made thousands of dollars pitching that ad to an ad company, by the way.
And they would have gobbled it up.
They would have loved it. It's like DoorDash making moments, you just say some shit like that. And then, but it's all just like it's people saying the world is burning, and then DoorDash, and then the world is burning, DoorDash. And it's just,
the contrast.
It's such a cognitive dissonance. And that's the problem with social media, is what it does to your brain when you are, forced, like it's, flipping between TV channels times 200, so it's, or really 1,000.
And so, it's just who can bombard you more versus presenting an idea on its merit, right?
Yeah,
and then I've got this business idea. I think it's great. Help people make money, and then or bombard.
And then it's like, what makes you basically have no choice but to go completely numb, because you're not really present. You're kind of in a coma. Yeah. It's like your life is flashing before your eyes. And
you got helicopter parents bombarding you with reminders, and now Gmail nudges you. This is the most millennial thing ever. Gmail berates you and says, you haven't responded to this email yet. Here's what we think you should tell them. What?
I haven't got them saying, here's what I think you should tell them, but definitely like, would you like to, you haven't responded in 3 days, and you can dismiss the nudge. But I know what you're saying. And predictive text fill-ins and things like that, for sure.
I mean, are we that? Yeah. Let's.
And so It just gets to a point where it's how do you use any of this for good? And then even if like you stumble upon something that like makes you somehow within 7 seconds or 1 minute of watching it makes you cry, and because they're so good at grabbing you, and then you're like touched by it somehow, then the next thing's it's just gonna be DoorDash, and it's all just undercut. So what? I don't understand how economies. It proves to me that economies are just ideas. The attention economy proves to me that it's all
That's
just
what
ideas.
they call it, the attention economy. Absolutely, and
so.
Yeah.
And it takes ideas in order to grab people's attention. And so it really does just prove that everything's just concepts at a certain point.
Right. And I'm in it. We're gonna wind down this episode here, and we'll come back for episode 2. But I'll
sorry.
No, this is awesome. I'm
good.
Thrilled.
I'm glad.
But I'm in it to prove the total opposite, because I've had zillions of consultants lately. Okay, Mark.
Oh, yeah?
You need to bombard people with TikTok videos. You need to bombard people with YouTube videos, and maybe that's cool. Whatever. I get it. I mean, I have to get my word out there somehow. I'm really good at not promoting my good ideas, but
I hope that my cynicism is somehow wrong, but I don't think it is. But I also, it's like it's a democracy, but I don't think I have a choice. I'm just gonna have to make a bunch of content. Clip-its and stuff, and build my little audience that way. It's the Joni Mitchell quote, you got to make a lot of money and leave this crazy scene.
Oh, cool.
So right, like I'm kind of at a loss for what else to do. Like, stand for what you believe in and add it into the noise. And I guess there's just people who have different brains than me, and maybe somehow, like we were saying before, like that one, because I have had crazy things happen where I put out some content, and then like someone reaches out to me who's a successful songwriter, and we write something together.
Cool.
Like it does.
That's
it
great.
does lead, even if only like it got 20 likes or something like that. And so you really do never know what something's going to lead to, or if you're saving someone's life somehow.
Oh, yeah.
So
with some encouraging song or whatever. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like when I say I wish things weren't so obscure and I wish they were more popular, I don't mean necessarily money, sure, but what I really mean is, look, I've got a great idea here, and I wish people could enjoy this awesome thing. Like I do it with everything, like little hidden gem restaurants, or like, oh, I wish everyone knew about this because it's wonderful.
Yeah, I get it, and like I think that just the world itself and something about capitalism, or it's just things aren't nimble enough. It's like if someone has a great idea and it's worth implementing immediately, the world should be designed to implement it as quickly as possible.
And that's been my problem for 10 years. I have a wonderful idea. I can bulletproof people's technology, right? You'd think that would spread, but no. It's been years for me trying to figure out how to get this out there. But that's the thing, because I like to argue on merit. And here, this is my idea, here's the merit, instead of bombard with repetitive, We're going to be right back here. That was the end of episode 1. Taylor Abrahamse, this has been an awesome conversation. I hope y'all are enjoying this so far. Buy my book for all your friends. TheComputerExorcist.com is where you can find that. And we'll talk to you next time.